One child's words exposed a shocking truth at the wedding. The paper beneath the table. A red toy car slid off the edge of the glass table, clattered across the wooden floor, then went still under a thin wash of light. The boy gripped my hand, his fingers ice cold. "Grandma, don't look underneath." I froze. The tablecloth fell like a curtain. What was behind that curtain, and why was this small heart trembling so hard? I sat beside my 7-year-old grandson on the day of my son's second wedding. The lakeside glass ballroom shimmered with lights like long ribbons of phosphorescence. A string quartet drifted softly over white lace tablecloths. Leo, the child I love more than my own life, was driving his red car along invisible roads across the linen. The adult world rushed past his ears like a faraway stream. I straightened the little bow under his collar, an absent-minded caress of the memory of Maria, my first daughter-in-law, gentle as the morning sun. Far off, Alex, the groom, was busy raising a glass at every table. Ava, the new bride in a beaded gown, flashed a radiant smile for the cameras. A prickle rose down my spine, but I soothed myself. "You're just being sentimental." Before we begin, take a moment to comment. Your city, where are you watching from today? And once the story is over, don't forget to rate it from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. Chapter 1, The Quartered Note. Servers glided past like white silhouettes over a still lake. Wine poured soft as silk. Flatware touched down as lightly as breath. An elderly couple at our table turned to me, kind and polite. "The boy has grown so fast, Betty. How old is he now?" As if it were only yesterday. "He just turned 7. I smiled, slicing a small piece of cake onto his plate. Leo glanced up, eyes bright with a quick thank you, then bowed his head again, letting the car trace a safe path across the white cloth. Suddenly the car stopped. Small hands went rigid. Leo's wide round eyes sharpened with a grown-up seriousness. He tugged my sleeve, his knuckles cold. "Grandma, I want to go outside. Now." "What is it, sweetheart?" I bent close, a hand on his shoulder, keeping my voice even. He pressed his lips together. "Grandma, don't look under the table." A cold blade slid down my spine. I smoothed his hair. "It's okay. Let me check." I bent, lifted the edge of the cloth. Beneath it lay a dim space spattered with reflections, rows of wooden chair legs, Leo's little shoes swinging gently, and one small object lying alone like a pebble in a stream, a paper folded into quarters. It was thin, a faint wine stain at the corner edges, curled from damp. Leo huddled into my arm, breath, quick chest fluttering. I could hear my own heartbeat thudding in my ear like a dry drum. I eased the paper out. The room still laughed, the music still sang, but my world shrank to a single circle, me, Leo, the note. I opened it. Sloppy blue ballpoint ink, table 8, add shrimp to the kids' plate. I didn't need to read it twice. My blood chilled in a single sweep. Leo has a severe seafood allergy, something every person in our family knows by heart. One little shrimp could pull him to the door of death. My hand tightened around his feeling, his fingers tremble like a soaked sparrow's wings. I stood. The chairs skated softly across the floor. The elderly couple watched me, worried. I drew Leo into my chest, a mother bear shield kicking in on instinct. The room's sounds turned into a pane of glass, everything on the other side, and me here with fear rising to my throat. Memories flashed like backlit slides. Maria, my daughter-in-law, with a smile warm as dawn, a polka dot apron, that low, steady voice as she set a bowl of chicken and bell pepper soup in front of me. "Mom, try it, see if it's right." Leo still toddling, then clutching an old red toy car, chirping through the yard. And that night he burned with fever, his tiny body hot as coal's eyes, too heavy to open. Maria held him, tears falling in silence. "I'm so scared, Mom." I sat beside them, taking turns laying warm cloths on his brow, whispering, "We'll get through this." We stayed up until the first pale light, when Leo's breath finally smoothed out. Maria looked at me, eyes red and shining with a thin smile. Without you, I'd have fallen apart. I took her hand and squeezed a promise to always be here. Until the afternoon, the phone shrieked. A policeman's voice, even and cold. The plate slipped from my hand and shattered into porcelain petals across the tile. Maria was gone too fast, like a lantern snuffed mid-storm. Now in this room of lights, I understood the old pain was rising again in a new shape, a tiny paper that could steal my only grandchild. I lowered the note and drew a long breath. Lucy, keep an eye on Leo. My adopted daughter Lucy was already pulling Leo into her arms, a calm hand beating a steady rhythm between his shoulders. Where are you going, Mom? To find an answer. I left our table and threaded through the rows of chairs. Near the bar, a few servers gathered to switch shifts. Their laughter sounded far away. I spotted the young waiter who'd stopped by our table a few times, the tip of his chin, dusted with powdered sugar, probably from carrying dessert plates. I held up the note. Did you receive this? He looked and went visibly pale. Ma'am, I think it's mine. Someone gave it to me and asked me to send it to the kitchen. I must have dropped it while carrying a tray. Who? My voice sounded as dry as paper. A girl at that table. I don't know her name. I closed my eyes for a beat. Inside my chest, every muscle twisted between fear and anger. Listen carefully, my grandson is severely allergic to seafood. A single shrimp could kill him. The waiter stammered, white-knuckled on his tray as if it were a life buoy. I'm sorry. I didn't know. The MC's voice boomed from the hall. Ladies and gentlemen, please prepare for the main course. Each word pricked like needles. No one touches Leo's plate. I returned to the hall and took Leo's hand. The chandelier poured light into 100 crystal glasses. A soft wave ran through the room as I stood. May I have a moment? I didn't raise my voice yet. Silence fell at once. Before the main course is served, there's something I need to clarify. I held up the note. Who wrote this? Who ordered shrimp added to the child's meal at table 8? Heads turned. The strings held a single long note caught in the throat. Alex hurried over from the next table. The smile drained from his face when he met my eyes. Mom. I pushed the paper toward him. Alex read it. All the color left his cheeks. Why is this here? Cameras still flickered in the corner where Ava had been smiling just moments ago. She approached, brows knitting, voice velvet soft. It was likely someone's foolish joke. Please don't let it spoil the mood. I looked straight into her eyes. My grandson is allergic to seafood. This is not a joke. The air thickened. Lucy stood close, holding Leo tight. When I lowered my cheek to comfort him, I could feel his heartbeat through my skin. But this wasn't the end. I laid the note in the center of the table, a piece of evidence still wet with wine, and prepared to see this through. The main course was about to be served. Who was behind the note? And how do I keep Leo safe right here in the middle of a wedding? Chapter 2. The days when laughter lingered. The wedding's golden light blurred as that small hand kept trembling in mine. The quartered note hung in my chest like a stone. But instead of sinking straight into fear, my mind was pulled backward to those far-off months when a child's laughter and Maria's voice still filled a little suburban house. Back then, Alex and Maria's place outside Phoenix wasn't fancy. A red brick home under sun-faded shingles, a backyard fenced with weathered wood. But to me, it was the warmest place on earth. Every afternoon when I stopped by, the clink of dishes, Leo's baby talk and giggles, and the smell of Maria's cooking spreading through the rooms were enough to settle my heart. I still remember a breezy afternoon, Maria at the stove in her polka-dot apron, hair tied back, a natural flush on her cheeks. She turned to me bright and proud. Mom, I tried making chicken soup with bell peppers. See if it tastes right. At the table, Leo, just learning to walk, clung to his battered toy car and wobbled across the living room. Each time he stumbled, Maria laughed, scooped him up, and kissed his soft baby hair. I sat nearby, savoring the hot soup and watching the two of them chatter. The way Maria measured every spoonful, every kiss sometimes made me turn away to wipe a tear. Not a sad tear, gratitude. Life had given my son a kind wife and given me a grandson to adore. That string of memories led to one fateful night. Leo spiked a fever, his small body reddened like embers. Maria clutched him, tears streaking down her face. "Mom, I'm so scared," she choked. I pressed my shoulder to hers, trading turns with the warm compress on his brow. In that moment, I learned a mother's strength is to stand steady in fear, to be the shore a child can lean on. I whispered, "Don't worry. He's strong. He'll get through." And he did. Near dawn, Leo's breath gentled. His lashes lowered as he drifted to sleep in Maria's arms. Maria lifted her head, eyes raw but shining with the thinnest smile. "Thank you, Mom. Without you, I would have fallen apart." I only squeezed her hand, a silent vow that I would always be there for her and for the boy. But fragile happiness doesn't last long. One ordinary afternoon, I was washing dishes when the phone rang. The officer's voice was flat, rigid as a verdict. "We're sorry. There's been a traffic accident. Maria didn't make it." The plate slipped and shattered across the tile splinters, grinding salt into my heart. The funeral came on a day of driving rain. The sky cried with us. I held 4-year-old Leo in my arms. His clear, innocent eyes searched around bewildered. "Mommy, where are you?" I swallowed hard, tried to hold back tears, and whispered, "Your mommy's in a beautiful place, sweetheart." But my heart was torn to rags. Alex collapsed by the casket, shoulders shaking. My son was never the same after that day. He buried himself in work out before dawn, home past dark, leaving the house emptier and colder. And Leo, poor little soul, carried the largest wound. He spoke little, his gaze often far away, as if waiting for a miracle. I became his only steady anchor. I told him stories about his mother. "She used to sing this nursery rhyme to you, remember?" Or, "Your mom cut fruit into star shapes, just to trick you into eating more." I spoke through a tightening throat to keep Maria's presence alive in his heart and in mine. In those gray months, Lucy, my adopted daughter, became a small candle warming our home. She brought coloring books and trays of golden, fragrant cookies. She sat for hours beside Leo, teaching him to sound out words, drawing crooked houses on paper. When he giggled that my house looks better than Miss Lucy's, Lucy's eyes lit up, sparkling like tiny glass beads. Alex came and went in silence. But each time he stepped inside, I saw Lucy's eyes follow him, a look that meant something deeper than sisterly affection. I knew, and I chose silence. Our family already had too many scars. I didn't dare touch another. Those memories surged back as I held the note in the wedding hall. Past and present braided together, twisting my heart. I had watched a home shatter in a heartbeat. I had promised Maria I would protect Leo at any cost. And now that promise was being tested again. I drew a breath and looked to Lucy. She was holding Leo tight, a small human shield. I knew it wasn't just me. Lucy would never let anyone lay a hand on this child either. The paper trembled in my hand like a small half-burned flame. I knew the truth was about to surface. I also knew the road ahead would not be easy. One rainy day had taken Maria. On this wedding day was another plot waiting to take Leo. Chapter 3: A Rainy Day on the Glass. The wedding music still echoed somewhere behind me, but in my head there was only the sound of a rainy day years ago. A day that buried Maria's gentle smile and left in Leo's eyes a hollow that has never been filled. That rain burst from the sky as if the heavens ached. I stood by the chapel's glass window. Raindrops hammered relentlessly, dragging into tangled streaks like cracks. There was no shelter from it. The earth turned to sponge black umbrellas clustering into moving dots among the graves. The coffin sank. Ropes hissed through pulleys with a sharp tearing squeal. Alex fell to his knees at the lip of the grave, fingers clawing mud eyes emptied out. I had never seen my son ruined like that. The man who once laughed, booming laughs with Maria in his arms, was now just a torn shadow. Every lash of rain across my face felt like a whip, reminding me our family would never be the same. In my arms, Leo was only 4. He didn't understand, not really. He saw the crowd in black, his father crying, my hands shaking, his voice trembling like a baby bird asked Grandma, "Where's Mommy?" My throat closed. I held him tighter. "She's gone to a beautiful place. A place that always watches over you." Saying it felt like breaking my own heart. In the days after the house sank into silence, Alex became someone else. He dove into workout before the light back after Leo had fallen asleep. Family dinners vanished. Children's laughter vanished. The kitchen, once bright with Maria's cooking, was left to the lonely clatter of Lucy and me. Leo bore the deepest bruise. He didn't wail. He folded inward. One afternoon, I found him in the corner of the living room, clutching his red toy car, staring out the window. The curtains stirred with the draft, but Leo didn't turn. His eyes looked older than his years, as if he were waiting for someone who would never come back. At night, I sat beside his bed and told him stories. Once your mother loved picking white daisies in the garden. Do you remember? He nodded gently and whispered, "I remember Mommy sang me to sleep." His voice was a single fragile thread. It hurt me and it steeled me to keep Maria alive inside him. Lucy, my adopted daughter, became the one warm breath left in the house. She brought old comics, crisp cookies, and boxes of crayons. "Draw something, Leo. Draw your house." His hand trembled as he sketched a crooked roof. But when Lucy cheered, "Yours is better than mine," a quick light passed over his face. Just a flicker, but enough to keep hope alive. I noticed the way Lucy looked at Alex. Each time he walked in weary and spent, she'd pause, her eyes full of something unnameable. I saw it and I held my tongue. Some feelings don't need names, especially when a family is standing on such a thin edge. Time moved, but the wound never closed. Leo went to school with a quiet face. Once his teacher pulled me into the hallway and whispered, worried, "He's so reserved, Mrs. Betty. He stares off and won't join the games. Is he okay?" I managed a stiff smile. "It's just the aftermath." But as we walked home, he pinched a fold of my coat and murmured, "I don't want to go home. Mommy isn't there." Those few words lodged like a thorn in my bones. That storm keeps returning to me. The patter on the chapel roof, the soft suck of mud, Alex's strangled sobs. Each memory settles heavier on my shoulders, weighted with the duty to keep Leo safe. I promised Maria, and no time or forgetting can wash that promise away. And now, on Alex's wedding day, with a cruel note in my hand, I can hear that old rain roaring back. My heart cinches tight. If I couldn't keep Maria in my son's life, then I will never let anyone touch Leo. I clench the paper and lift my eyes to the glittering chandelier. It glints cold as the 1,000 raindrops of that funeral night. In the midst of guests' laughter, I make a quiet vow to myself. This time, I will not let tragedy return. One loss has already become a scar that will not heal. Now that a new scheme has surfaced in the middle of this wedding, do I have the strength to stand up and protect my grandson? Here's the English translation in the MAE 04:1 storytelling style. Faithful, smooth, and ready for voiceover. Chapter 4: The Woman in the Blue Dress. I remember that day clearly. Late summer sky, golden sunlight flooding the eaves, a light breeze teasing the bougainvillea by the door. In the kitchen, I was bent over the stove, tasting the soup, getting Leo's usual dinner ready. Suddenly, the door opened and Alex's voice rang out, both nervous and unusually excited. "Mom, I want to introduce you to someone." I turned. Alex stood there, his hand clasping a young woman's. She wore a pale blue dress, hair in soft waves, lips a rosy red. Her smile bloomed bright, perhaps a bit too bright. I hesitated as if a strange gust had swept into our familiar home. She introduced herself in a honeyed voice. "I'm Ava. It's so nice to meet you." Her glittering eyes skimmed the framed photos on the wall where Maria held baby Leo. That gaze lingered a breath longer than it needed to, then melted into a perfect smile. I invited Ava to sit. Dinner was simple green mango salad, braised pork, and the sweet cornbread Leo loved. Alex brimmed with excitement, praising Ava over and over, kind, talented, charming. I listened, a small undercurrent rising in my chest. Was this the woman my son hoped to start over with? Leo was quiet that night, picking at his rice eyes down. He didn't chatter about school like he always did. When Ava held out a chocolate bar and cooed, "I brought you a treat." Leo, so yummy, he turned his face away, his little hand tightening around the spoon. I caught a flicker of caution in his eyes, an instinct children don't often have. Alex started to scold him. "Leo, don't be rude." I cut in quickly. "It's all right. He's probably tired." Ava kept smiling, unruffled, but I thought I saw the faintest chill behind her eyes. Lucy was there too. She sat quietly across the table, her simple beige dress a sharp contrast to Ava's polish. From time to time, Lucy glanced at Alex, then lowered her eyes and bit her lip. I knew her heart was stirring, yet she held herself back, like a covered candle burning low. When Ava placed her hand on Alex's, Lucy's fingers trembled, the water in her glass rippling. No one said a word, but a heavy hush settled over the room. After the meal, Ava sprang up. "Let me wash the dishes for you." I refused a few times, but finally let her into the kitchen. From the living room, I watched her roll up her sleeves and hum as she rinsed every move just right. When she returned, she sat beside Leo, praising the messy scribbles on his paper. Leo immediately put down his pencil and turned away. Ava masked it with a small, awkward laugh, yet something flashed in her eyes that left me uneasy. Ava began stopping by often. One morning, she showed up with a bright smile. "I'd love to take Leo to the park." I nodded stiffly. When they came back, she beamed. He was on the slide forever and even asked for more ice cream. But Leo's shirt was stained, his eyes clouded. He hugged his toy car and said nothing. I crouched to ask, "Did you have fun, sweetheart?" He gave the slightest nod, gaze drifting. Another time, I heard her voice from the kitchen, sharp and scolding, "Quiet, Leo. You're a big boy. Stop being so messy." I froze. When I stepped out, she'd already switched to sugar sweet. "Look at that tall tower Leo built." I looked over and met the boy's pleading eyes. My heart clenched, though my mind tried to soothe it. Maybe she simply isn't used to children yet. On Leo's 7th birthday, Lucy brought a homemade chocolate cake. Candles flickered. Leo squealed with delight and ran to hug her. "Auntie, your cake is my favorite." Ava's face went stiff. She clapped dutifully, nothing more. Her gift was a flat, tidy wish, her eyes cold as glass. Watching it, a shiver moved through me. Time passed and the uneasy pieces piled up. Leo's teacher whispered that he spoke less and less and often dodged any mention of Miss Ava. On the walk home, Leo clutched my sleeve, voice trembling. "Grandma, I don't want to be with her." I held him close, soothing him while the needle of suspicion drove deeper into my heart. Now, in this lavish wedding hall, with Ava glittering in white beaded satin, I remember the wary look in Leo's eyes on his birthday, the snap of her voice in my kitchen. Perhaps all those fragments are locking into a single dark picture. The note under the table adds shrimp to the child's plate, cut like a finishing blow. I knew then my doubts had never been imagination. A cold intuition rose in me. The very woman in the wedding gown might be the hand behind it all. How long can sweet lies keep our eyes shut? Beneath all those perfect smiles, am I looking straight at the person who wants to destroy my family? Morning, the day before the wedding photos, sunlight spilled onto the windowsill like a thin layer of honey. I set water to boil, placed a porcelain cup by the window, and watched the heat curl upward into idle little threads of smoke. Leo sat on the rug in the living room, laying out a plastic train track that looped around a tiny city. In the middle, a section was missing two ends, hovering not quite touching. He lifted a piece of track, put it down, lifted it again, then finally hugged his red toy car to his chest as if holding a secret. "Why don't you finish the bridge?" I asked, sitting across from him, so the light fell on his face. Leo shook his head without looking at me, the baby fine hairs at his forehead trembling in the sun. "The bridge is about to fall." "Grandma," he whispered soft, but enough to chill the back of even a calm adult's neck. Children rarely speak like that. When they do, it's often an honest shadow of fear. I stroked his hair, my palm heated by the sunlight. "I'm here," I whispered. "The bridge won't fall." Alex came home late that night, a light trace of alcohol mingled with cologne clinging to his suit. He set a long box on the chair, loosened his tie, eyes bright like a man about to step into a new dawn. "Do you think this tie matches Ava picked it?" he said, cheerful, a hint of showing off in his voice. I didn't comment on the tie. "Did you call the restaurant back?" Leo's allergy. "I've already printed red cards to stick in front of the kids' plates." Alex frowned, the same frown he'd worn ever since Maria died, the one he saved for me whenever I mentioned anything overly cautious. "Don't worry, Mom. Ava's handling it. She's been talking with the kitchen for a month." I stayed patient. All the more reason to double-check. "You know, a small oversight. I know." He cut me off so quick he knocked a hanger to the floor. "You always expect the worst." "Ava isn't careless." I swallowed the reply. "Motherhood has seasons when the only thing you can do is quietly shoulder the bitter fruit that's just ripened." The next morning, Ava showed up early in a smoky gray jumpsuit, pointed heels, and a perfectly measured smile. "I'll take Leo to fit his suit and we'll swing by the florist," she said like someone who knew the script. I slipped Leo's jacket on, bent to fasten the buttons, and reminded him of what no one could possibly forget. No strawberry ice cream, no unfamiliar food, and absolutely no seafood. Ava smiled. Her eyes skimmed past me the way you pass an old road sign. "Yes, I've got it memorized." The door closed and her perfume drifted through the house. I collected the dishes and walked the length of the bookcase. The frame of Maria, holding newborn Leo, had been nudged askew. The family photo in the center of the wall had slid slightly off to the side. I straightened them both, as if tugging the axis of the house back to where it belonged. By afternoon, Leo returned with a butterfly bow tilted off-center and shiny black shoes in a box. Ava perched on the edge of a chair, voice bright. "Handsome, right?" Leo nodded out of politeness and vanished into his room, the latch clicking so softly a grown-up might mistake it for a draft. I tapped his door with a glass of milk. "May I come in?" He drew the latch and opened it a crack. On the bed, the red toy car lay neatly beside a drawing, a thin line running from a small hand to the car. "You don't like the shoes?" I asked. He hesitated. "She said boys have to wear hard shoes to be manly." "Manly or not," I said, "what matters is that your feet don't hurt." He nodded, buried his face in my shoulder, his breath warm and damp, like a wordless plea. A few days later, the teacher called. Worry and apology threaded through her voice. "Mrs. Betty, lately he speaks very little, startles easily, and sits staring at the clock for a long time. When invited to play in groups, he slips away." I thanked her more than I usually would, then phoned Lucy. "Can you come by tonight?" Lucy arrived with a new box of crayons, spread paper on the rug, and drew the first picture to pull Leo in. "Draw something you're afraid of losing," she prompted. Leo drew the red car, misshapen, its wheels about to come off the axle. Lucy didn't correct it. She added only a fine string from the boy's hand to the car like a kite line. "Hold the string tight," she murmured, her voice gentle as a lantern in a storm. For the rehearsal at the venue, the mirrored ceiling reflected round chandeliers like 100 moons. Ava stood in the crowd, phone at her ear, giving crisp commands. Move the backdrop back 10 centimeters. White roses with baby's breath. No lemon-colored ribbon. I stood by table 8 and flipped the menu. Kids' meal: pumpkin soup, herb butter, roasted chicken, mashed potatoes. I exhaled. Please stick an allergy, no seafood tag right in front of my grandson's setting, I told the manager. He nodded like a metronome. When I turned, Ava glanced over and smiled with that lovely mouth while her eyes kept their cool color. An old woman learns early to recognize a smile that never reaches the bottom of the eyes. That evening, we ate together at home. Alex talked about his speech, planning to end with, "Thank you, Mom, for keeping this family standing." Ava stirred her soup voice, velvet soft with a hidden pin. Maybe say, "Thank you to everyone. To be safe, if you forget someone by name, it's awkward." Alex looked at me, then nodded to her. I spooned more greens into Leo's bowl. Ava leaned in and murmured as if idly, "He's a big boy now, don't spoil him or he'll grow weak." I lifted my head and met her gaze. Kindness doesn't make anyone weak. She smiled like a photograph that had learned to move. A small slip happened at the supermarket. A bag of candy burst, bright pieces rolling like marbles. Leo bent to pick them up on reflex. "Leave it," Ava said, one cold metallic note loud enough to make strangers turn. "Let the staff handle it." Alex frowned. "Careful, son." I stood behind an aisle display and felt something hairline crack beneath the glossy glaze. That night, Leo taped the drawing the line, tethering the car above his bed. From the doorway, it looked like a little talisman of safety he was giving himself. A week before the wedding, the venue manager texted an update. I asked again about the allergy, and he confirmed the red cards were printed and the kitchen reminded. Less than an hour later, a strange number messaged me, "Table 8, add shrimp for adults," with a shrimp emoji. I called immediately. The kid sounded panicked. "Ma'am, that's the shared appetizer note for adults. Kids' meals are separate." I asked him to write it in bold, "No shrimp child portion." He agreed so fast it sounded like he swallowed his words. I hung up, yet somewhere in my bones a slow drip kept ticking. The long years have taught me mistakes rarely kill, but intention can. The night before the wedding, I sat by the window and watched tree shadows draw long lines across the street. Lucy brewed ginger tea, her small hands wrapped around the warm cup. "You can't sleep. I'm worried," I said, so honest it sounded like a confession. Lucy stared into the tea, and then, careful with each word, said, "I don't think Ava loves Leo. Not a doesn't know kids yet thing, more like she sees him as a knot that needs untying." I looked up. In Lucy's eyes lay her own quiet pain set gently down. She wasn't asking for anything for herself, only standing on the boy's side, and that silence made me trust her more than any oath. Tomorrow, I told her, "Don't take your eyes off Leo." Lucy nodded, her gaze kindling like a small flame about to catch. The wedding day was sky-washed blue, as if the sun had scrubbed it dry. The hall gleamed, white flowers arched into a canopy, tablecloths draped soft. I straightened Leo's bow and kissed his sun-warm hair. "If you feel it's hard to breathe, tell me right away," I said. He nodded, his palm ice cold in mine. Ava entered like a star skimming a lake's surface, her gown rippling with silver light. Guests cheered. Cameras flashed like sparks. She leaned close to our table, crouching level with Leo's eyes. "Today, you're the little man of table 8. Leo hugged the red car tighter. Ava's gaze slid over the frayed toy like a blade licking past. Just a moment, but enough for me to glimpse a true edge kicked up by the wind. Appetizers arrived, a pink shrimp platter at the next table, savory pastries at ours. Alex raised his glass, his speech running like a stream that knew its bed. Near the end, he glanced at me, his lips forming, "Thank you, Mom," then changed it to "Thank you, everyone." I didn't feel a stab, Just a thin silence like a sheet of paper slipped between 2 pages of life. Music spread over the murmurs, and amid the layered sounds, I heard Leo's breath by my ear, quick and shallow. I went to the bar for a glass of water. In the hallway corner, 2 staff whispered. I caught a few scattered words. Table 8, kids' portion, bride said. I stepped closer. A young man about the age Alex had been when he started working flinched and stammered that he'd misheard, then hurried away. I returned to our table, my heart thudding like someone knocking at the door. Lucy read my eyes without a word. Something wrong? Not sure yet, I said, laying a hand on Leo's shoulder. But stay right beside him. Leo's red car slid off the table's edge like a falling star. He ducked to find it disappearing behind the white cloth. When he came up, his face had gone pale, and in his hand was something folded into quarters. Grandma. His breath snagged like he'd just run from a bad dream. Don't look down. I set my hand at the nape of his neck and felt the fine tremors. I'm here. I lifted the tablecloth. Underneath was shadow speckled with stray reflections, chair legs like pillars, and a small paper lying like a stone in a stream. A dry red wine streak marked the edge. I picked it up and unfolded it. Blue ballpoint rushed pressed hard enough to nick the corner. Table 8 add shrimp to the child's portion. Each word touched my skin like a dot of ice. For a moment, everything around me blurred into backdrop laughter, glass against glass, the music. At the center of the picture, there was only Leo pressing his head against my arm, and the paper in my hand hot as coal. I scanned the room. Ava was tilting her head, laughing with someone, her wine catching a shard of light. In her eyes, the instant she turned back toward us, I caught something swift, not fear, but measuring. I passed the paper to Lucy. Hold the boy. She folded Leo into her arms, those thin fingers lacing across his back, as if shielding a flame from the wind. I walked toward the servers where the young man, I remembered his name was Dewey, was carrying a tray of sweets. Who gave you this? I held up the note. Dewey glanced at it and went ash gray. I got it. Someone asked me to send it to the kitchen. I tucked it into a napkin, must have dropped it. Who asked? I don't know her name. A young woman in a pastel dress with the bride's group. His voice cracked, and in those unseasoned eyes I saw the thin line between innocence and cowardice. I wanted to roar, but I am a mother and a grandmother, and the old wisdom pulled me steady. Listen carefully, I said low, each word hooking into my own heart. My grandson is allergic to seafood. One small shrimp can stop his heart. Tell me every detail you remember. He nodded again and again, words tripping over themselves. His fear did not soften me. It only convinced me that in this beautiful room, there was a hand trying to shove my child off the bridge. I returned to our table and laid my hand on Leo's back, feeling his warmth like a fine thread pulling me from the edge. Alex was laughing with someone at the next table, his boutonniere tipped slightly. When he looked over, I lifted the paper as if raising a blade. Mom, he breathed. What is that? I didn't answer. I only knew it was time to end every lie tied up with ribbon. Inside me, that old rain began to fall again, only this time I stood upright beneath it, eyes wide open to see clearly, the one who had soaked my family's heart with a smile. I tightened my grip on Leo's hand, feeling those small fingers clutching for the safe shore. He looked up at me, round eyes glossy, as if someone had just dropped a last bead of water into them. Grandma. He said one word, carrying both a question and a plea. No one will touch you. I answered, my voice strangely calm, the very voice I'd used years ago, the night Maria held her feverish boy. I set the note at the edge of the tablecloth, straightened Leo's bow tie and smoothed Lucy's dress. Then I drew a breath and stepped out into the bright room. They say there are moments that make a marker out of an ordinary person. I understood this was mine. The MC was introducing the main course, his voice fizzing like champagne. I moved a half step forward, the wooden floor knocking 3 soft beats under my shoes. No drum roll, no staging, just a grandmother rising in the middle of her son's wedding with a wine-stained paper in her hand. And I knew that before I said what needed saying, I was no longer afraid of the stares that might pierce my back. I feared only one thing, that if silence won again, the bridge that child had said is about to fall would truly fall tonight. The music still flowed softly through the hall, each velvety jazz note weaving around the laughter and the clinking of glasses. But within me, all those sounds shattered, leaving only the hurried heartbeat of Leo trembling against my arm. The folded note remained in my palm, its blue ink letters looking as if they had just been written with raw malice. Table 8. Add shrimp to the children's portion. My breath caught as though a block of ice had been pressed against my chest. No one in this glittering room knew that a single bite of seafood could steal away the life of the boy I loved more than myself. I lifted my eyes, scanning the crowd. Alex laughed brightly with his colleagues, wine shimmering in his glass. Ava, her wedding gown sparkling like a night sky full of stars, turned for the photographer, letting him capture her most radiant angles. For them, this moment was happiness light celebration. But Leo and I were trapped in a narrow pocket of darkness beneath a tablecloth. Grandma. His small voice shook, brief like a cry for help. I bent down, cupping his cheek, whispering, "It's all right, I'm here." Yet my eyes never left the paper. I knew silence would mean pushing my grandson to the edge of a cliff. I stood, pressing Leo gently toward Lucy, signaling for him to stay close to her. She understood at once, wrapping him in her arms, her deep, dark eyes locking with mine without a word. I stepped into the aisle, the paper still clutched in my hand. My heels tapped the wooden floor, 3 quiet beats that still made my heart leap in my chest. The MC had just announced the main course when my voice cut in. Only one sentence, but it split the banquet in 2. Please stop for a moment. The music halted, conversations died away, and hundreds of eyes turned toward table 8. I felt every breath, every blink in that silence. What is it? Mother Alex had risen, confusion and unease written across his face. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I placed the paper on the table, smoothing it flat like a piece of cold evidence. Someone sent this to the kitchen. I said, my voice strangely calm. They requested shrimp be added to the children's meal at our table. The room sank into heavy silence. Then whispers swelled, rippling outward like waves. Shrimp for children. Why? Alex strode over, snatching up the paper. His eyes scanned the words, and his face drained of color. Leo is allergic to seafood, he choked out. Who would do this? I saw Lucy's shoulders quiver, but she only tightened her arms around Leo, shielding him like a wall. Ava finally approached. Her flawless face showed a flicker of shock before quickly masking it with a smile edged with feigned astonishment. Perhaps it's just a mistake, she said, her voice sweet as honey. But when my eyes met hers, even for a single second, I caught a cold glint beneath that smile, a rhythm out of tune. I raised my voice. Dewey, come here. The young waiter approached, his face drained of all color. I held up the note. Who gave this to you? He stammered, a young woman. With the bride's party. She asked me to pass it to the kitchen. I don't know anything else. His confession fell into the hall like a stone breaking the surface of a still pond. The guests murmured, many eyes turning sharply toward Ava. My heart pounded like war drums, but outwardly I remained calm, the calm forged only by years of being a mother, a grandmother. I fixed my gaze on Alex. Son, this is not a mistake. This is a plot. Alex staggered back, his hands trembling around the note, eyes darting between me, Leo, and Ava. No. Ava. Did you... His voice cracked as though the question itself was enough to tear his heart in 2. Ava let out a brittle laugh, then turned to the guests. Please don't misunderstand. Who would ever harm a child? Clearly this is... Some foolish prank. But then Lucy stood. She set Leo gently on the chair and walked straight toward Ava. Her voice rang clear, sharp as a blade cutting through sugar-coated lies. Enough, Ava. I've endured this too long. It was you wanted to hurt Leo. The slap Lucy struck echoed through the hall, shattering the breathless silence into a storm of whispers, gasps, and scraping chairs. Ava clutched her cheek, her eyes blazing with fury. She's mad with jealousy, inventing lies to destroy me. But then, like a final drop overflowing a cup, another voice rose weak, trembling from across the room. Gloria, Ava's younger sister, barely 18, stood with tears streaming down her face. No, it's not a lie. Ava told me to give the note to the waiter. I didn't know what was written. I swear. A chorus of gasps erupted. Alex froze, his face chalk white. The wine glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. He swayed as if a storm had ripped through the bridge of his life. Ava stumbled back, lips trembling, searching for a defense. But every eye in the room was on her now, eyes filled with suspicion, anger, disappointment. And I knew no bridal gown, no dazzling light could cover the truth anymore. I gripped Leo's small hand, bent down, and whispered, "You're safe now." In his eyes, tears sparkled, not from fear this time, but from realizing that the arm he clung to was still there, steady as a wall. And in me, a long, smoldering fire ignited fully. If necessary, I would burn this entire hall to the ground, so long as my grandson remained safe. The music had fallen silent, leaving only whispers, the crash of broken glass and ragged breaths thickening the air. The candles that once glimmered now flickered as if about to die, casting tremors of light across Ava's ashen face. She still clutched her cheek, eyes bloodshot, burning with both fury and panic. "Don't believe her!" Ava screamed, voice shrill, pointing straight at Gloria. "She's jealous. She's making this up to destroy my happiness." But Gloria stood her ground, her small shoulders, trembling eyes brimming with tears, yet unwavering. "I'm not lying. I only gave the note to the waiter because you asked me to. I didn't know. I had no idea it could kill Leo." Her words fell like a death knell. The entire hall froze, then erupted into an even louder storm of voices. Those who once knew Ava gasped in disbelief. Strangers shook their heads in disgust. Alex staggered, his eyes red and wet, arms hanging limp at his sides. He looked at Ava as though she were a stranger, then at Leo huddled in Lucy's arms, trembling but still clutching his little red car. In Alex's gaze, a deep hollow cracked open, swallowing what fragile trust remained. "Ava," his voice rasped like a drowning man clutching at a reed. "Tell me the truth. Did you do this?" Ava turned toward him, lips trembling, her eyes flickering with desperation. But the chorus of murmurs, the scraping of chairs, the sighs around her smothered any chance to hide. "You don't understand, Alex." She burst into tears, makeup streaking. I just wanted Leo not to stand between us. I was so tired of you always putting him first." The confession shattered the air, draining every sound from the room. I could hear the wind against the glass panes, cold enough to cut through bone. The murmurs swelled into a wave of outrage. An older man, Alex's uncle, slammed his palm on the table and rose to his feet. "God above, how could you even think of harming a child on your wedding day?" Others echoed him, anger rippling across the hall. Ava stumbled back, her wedding gown sweeping the floor like a broken wave. She reached for Alex's arm, but he yanked away as if burned. "You knew about his allergy. You knew. And still." My son's voice broke, eyes bloodshot. "I loved you, Ava, but I cannot forgive this." Ava sobbed, throwing herself at his legs, but Lucy stepped forward, a pale shield of quiet fire. Her face was drained of color, yet her eyes blazed. "Don't touch him again," Lucy said, voice trembling but firm. "You nearly killed Leo. I won't let you near this family ever again." Her words cut the final thread. Around us, women wept quietly into handkerchiefs. Men muttered curses under their breath. The hotel's security approached, their faces stern. "Sorry, miss, but we have to escort you out to prevent further chaos." Ava shrieked, thrashing, "No, I'm the bride. This is my wedding. You can't." But her screams only stoked the crowd's fury. A guard's strong arm pinned her shoulder and guided her away amid sighs and scornful shakes of heads. Gloria collapsed into a chair, burying her face in her hands, sobbing. I went to her, laid a hand on her trembling shoulder. "This isn't your fault, Gloria. The truth needed to be spoken, and you were brave." Her tear-filled eyes lifted to me, searching for forgiveness. I gave a small nod, my heart torn with both sorrow and compassion. As Ava disappeared from sight, Alex crumpled, burying his face in his hands, sobs tearing out of him. I knelt beside him, my trembling palm on his shoulder. "My son, we've already lost too much. But this time, you haven't lost Leo. You must stay strong for him." Alex lifted his head, tears flooding exhausted eyes, flicking from me to Leo. The boy, still in Lucy's arms, looked frightened, but his fear eased when his father reached for him. "Leo, my son." Leo hesitated, then fell into his father's embrace, clutching at his shirt as though never to let go. Alex wept aloud, holding him tightly, whispering over and over, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't protect you." I stood there, my heart bleeding yet lit with a fragile flame. Lucy quietly placed her hand on Alex's back, lending him strength. In her gaze, I saw a love that ran deep, not only for Leo but for the broken man before her. The guests fell into silence, many turning away to leave us a circle of privacy. I knew the celebration had ended in ruins, but amid the wreckage, one truth remained. The truth was revealed, and Leo was safe. I bent down, kissed my grandson's soft hair, and whispered, "I promise I'll never let anyone hurt you again." And in that moment, I believed that promise carried more power than any ceremony in that glittering hall. That night, my little house felt heavy, as if a storm had just passed through. Alex drove quietly with Leo and Lucy in the back seat. The streetlights streaked across the windows in long beams, casting dark shadows over my son's weary face. Leo had fallen asleep in Lucy's arms, his head resting on her shoulder, his tiny hand still gripping the red toy car. I sat beside them, eyes fixed on my grandson. Each time I looked at his face, a knot of pain tightened in my chest. I had almost lost him on the very day meant to be Alex's happiest. When we arrived home, Alex carried Leo into his room and laid him on the bed as if he were a fragile treasure. He sat there for a long time, head bowed, his trembling hand stroking the boy's soft hair. Lucy quietly laid a blanket over Leo, then stepped out into the hallway. I saw Alex's shoulders shake, muffled sobs breaking through the night. I wanted to go in and hold him, but my legs felt bound. I could only watch through the crack of the door. So many times since Maria's death, I had seen my son like this, and each time I felt powerless, like an old tree that could give shade, but could not shield him from the storm. The next morning, the dining table, once alive with Leo's chatter, was silent. Alex poured a glass of milk for his son, but it remained untouched. The boy only toyed with the red car, never lifting his gaze. "Leo, eat something," Alex murmured, his voice hoarse. Leo pressed his lips together, shook his head, then whispered, "I'm scared, Dad." I saw Alex's eyes redden as if a rope were tightening around his chest. He reached out to touch his son, but froze, withdrawing his hand in helplessness. Lucy, seated beside them, gently pushed a plate with a few homemade pastries toward Leo. "I baked these last night," she said softly. "Nothing strange, just try one." Leo hesitated, then broke off a small piece and put it in his mouth. His eyes softened as he looked at Lucy, and I saw Alex's lips tremble on the verge of breaking. In that moment, he seemed to realize the painful truth. The happiness he had tried to build with a lavish wedding had crumbled, and the small flame keeping Leo safe was Lucy. At noon, when Leo was asleep, Alex sat with me on the porch. Sunlight filtered through the branches, spilling over his hollow face. "Mom," he rasped. "I did everything wrong, didn't I?" I sighed, my wrinkled hand closing over his. "You weren't wrong to seek happiness, Alex. But you were wrong to close your eyes to Leo's fear, to the signs I kept seeing. Fortunately, today, you still have him." Tears slid down onto my hand. He buried his head against my shoulder, just as he had done as a boy when nightmares woke him. "I don't know how to fix this, Mom," he sobbed. "I let Leo suffer too much." I stroked his back gently. "No one can replace Maria. And no one can replace your responsibility as his father. But Leo still has you. He still has Lucy. And he still has me. We haven't lost everything yet." That night, Lucy read to Leo. Her voice was steady and warm, telling the story of a sparrow lost in a storm who found its way home by following a faint light in the window. Leo's eyes drooped and he whispered, "Lucy, could you be my mom?" I heard it from the doorway and my heart tightened. Lucy froze, her eyes glistening, then placed a hand on his hair. "I'll always be here for you, whether as a mother, a sister, or whatever you need," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. I turned away, swallowing my tears. Maria was gone, but perhaps a new seed of life was quietly growing in the void she had left. A few days later, we visited the cemetery where Maria rested. Alex placed a bouquet of white flowers on the grave and stood in silence for a long time. Leo squeezed my hand and whispered, "Grandma, can Mom see me?" I bent down, kissed his cheek. "Of course, my love. She's always watching you, and I'm sure she's proud of how brave you've been." Alex heard this and his shoulders shook, his reddened eyes lifting to Lucy, who stood quietly behind us. In his gaze, I saw a fragile glimmer, as if hope itself was trying to rise again from the wreckage. That night, once Leo had fallen asleep, Alex sat with me in the kitchen. The yellow light cast shadows across his tired face, softened now with a measure of calm. "Mom," he began hesitantly, "I know Lucy has cared for Leo more than I have. Maybe I've been blind to the most obvious thing." I gave a sad smile. Son happiness doesn't always come wrapped in a wedding gown. Sometimes it comes from the hands that wipe a child's tears. Open your eyes before you lose it again. Alex fell silent, his fingers trembling as they tapped the table as though listening to the rhythm of his own heart. And I knew that from the ashes of that wedding night, our family would have to learn to walk again. Slowly but surely, never again, turning away from the quiet signs of love. After the broken wedding, time slipped by like slow afternoons, with sunlight stretching in long beams across the porch, scattering golden dust over familiar objects. Life inside the small house had seemed swallowed by shadow, yet little by little light returned, thanks to Leo. Each morning, the boy's small footsteps echoed across the wooden floor as he ran his red car through the living room, tracing winding lines as if sketching a new heartbeat for the family. At times, he paused, lifting his eyes to me as though needing reassurance that I was still there. I nodded, smiled, and he continued, a little lighter. Alex was different. My son lived as if carrying an unhealed wound steeped in shame and regret. He took Leo to school faithfully, yet his face always bore fatigue. Often I found him sitting blankly on the porch, a half-burnt cigarette in his hand, staring into nothing as though searching for an answer that would never come. Lucy remained patient. She often brought illustrated books for Leo, reading page by page, sometimes mimicking characters' voices until the boy burst into laughter. Each time Alex witnessed this, he grew silent, his eyes carrying words his mouth could not speak. One evening after dinner, Leo brought a drawing. A house stood in it with 3 people, a man, a woman with long hair, and a child holding a red car. "Who are they, my dear?" I asked, my heart tightening. "Me, Daddy, and Mommy, Lucy," he replied innocently. The room froze. Lucy blushed, her hands trembling on the table. Alex studied the drawing for a long time, his eyes stormy. I sat silently, letting the moment carve its own meaning. Later, Alex stepped onto the porch. I followed, finding him hunched over the railing, shoulders shaking. Mother, I don't deserve this. I was blind. I nearly destroyed Leo. How could Lucy? I placed my hand on his shoulder. Son, love isn't measured by the past, but by the present. Maria gave you a family, and when she left, Lucy opened her arms to hold the both of you. You must learn to treasure that. Alex bowed his head, tears dripping, staining the wood beneath him. That night, I sat alone in my room, pulling from an old drawer the handkerchief Maria had left. The fabric was worn, yet it still carried the faint scent of jasmine. I whispered, Maria, your husband has lost his way, but Lucy, she is guiding both father and child. If you can hear me, give him courage. I wept, but the tears were no longer bitter. They felt like a gentle release, returning a fragment of memory to the one who had gone. In the days that followed, I saw Alex begin to change. He started reading with Leo, even if only a few pages before falling asleep. He paid closer attention to meals, asking me repeatedly about safe foods as if to atone. And sometimes, when Lucy passed by, his gaze lingered, laden with remorse, yet gratitude too. One afternoon, while I was weeding in the garden, Leo's voice rang out, Daddy, higher. I looked up to see Alex pushing him on the swing, his face bright in the sunlight. Lucy clapped nearby, her hair flying in the breeze. The sight stilled me, for it had been so long since I'd seen such radiance in my son's eyes. That evening, Alex sat with me on the porch. He was silent for a long while before murmuring, Mother, I want a chance. Not for me, for Leo. I want him to grow up in a real family, not a broken half. I smiled, clasping his hand. If it's for Leo, you'll find the way. And if happiness stands right before you, don't let it slip away again. I knew he hadn't yet spoken to Lucy, but in his heart, a door had already opened. Leo still bore scars, still woke from dreams with a start, but with Lucy he laughed more, drew skies and flowers instead of only the solitary red car. I believed that from ashes our family was being reborn slowly but surely. And within me, a quiet gratitude grew for Lucy, like a seed Maria had left behind, now blooming with love. That autumn came softly like a hand's caress. The wind swept crimson and amber leaves from the maples, carpeting the narrow path to our old house. Life found its calm rhythm again. Each morning, Leo's voice rang out, Grandma, where's my car? He no longer curled up for hours clutching it, but laughed, ran into the yard, flew kites with Lucy. I watched from the window, warmth in my chest as the string quivered in his hands. He no longer feared the bridge about to fall because he had firm hands beside him. Alex, too, had changed. My son seemed awakened from a long dream. He no longer hid in work, nor drank to fill his emptiness. He spent his time with Leo. In the afternoons, I saw them building Lego towers on the porch, laughter echoing across the yard. In those moments, Alex's face glowed with a joy I thought had died with Maria. Lucy remained quietly present, gentle as a breeze. She never tried to replace anyone, never forced recognition. She simply stayed whenever Leo needed her, whenever Alex faltered. Many times I caught my son's gaze lingering on her, filled with gratitude, regret, and a growing tenderness he dared not yet name. One evening, as we sat at dinner, Leo suddenly dropped his spoon, looked straight at Lucy, and declared, I want you to be my mother. The room fell silent. Lucy froze, her face aflame, her hands trembling. Alex sat across, eyes glistening, lips moving with words that caught in his throat. I smiled softly, brushing Leo's hair. If that is your wish, my dear, then I believe your mother in heaven smiles with us too. My words loosed the knot. Alex stared at Lucy for a long while, then placed his hand over hers, voice raw. Lucy, I owe you more than thanks. I was blind, but you stayed by Leo, by all of us. If you'll accept, Raise my son with me as a real family." Tears spilled from Lucy's eyes. She said nothing, only nodded, her shoulders trembling. Leo shouted with joy, hugging her tightly, calling again and again. "Mom, Mom," tears streamed down my face, but my heart felt light, as though I'd finally set down a weight I'd carried for years. Maria's image filled my mind, her gentle smile, her soft eyes. I whispered within, "Rest easy, my dear. Your son and your child are safe now." In the days that followed, the house rang again with laughter. Alex was no longer the broken man, but a father beginning anew. Lucy stepped into her role with quiet devotion, not to replace, but to continue. And Leo, the boy once curled in shadow, now ran under the sun, his laughter bright as wind chimes. I knew happiness could indeed bloom from sorrow's shards. One evening, as autumn leaves swirled, Alex turned to me, his voice steady. "Mother, I understand now. Happiness isn't a wedding dress or a lavish feast. It's sitting here watching Leo smile, seeing Lucy care for him, and knowing we still have a home." With tears in my eyes, I replied, "Yes, my son. And remember, family is not only blood, it is also choice, love, and the courage to hold on." He embraced me tightly like when he was a child. I closed my eyes and let the tears fall, this time tears of peace. That night, I sat by the window, the moon spilling light across the quiet road. I thought of everything, of Maria, of Ava, of the tears, of the paper note that almost stole my grandchild, and of the moment Leo called Lucy mother. All that sorrow had not been in vain, for it had led us here, to where love had triumphed over lies, to where family was reborn. I whispered, as if sending a message to those still lost in darkness. Do not fear standing up. Do not stay silent when your heart speaks. A single act of courage can save a life. True happiness is not found in glittering illusions, but in the hands that remain clasped together after the storm. Above, the clouds parted and the moon shone pure. I smiled, feeling a quiet gentleness within my chest. Though the scars would always remain, we had found a way forward through love, through courage, and through the faith that after each loss, a family can bloom again.